Welcome here, everyone. I'm on the other side of your screen, but we got a fresh new face, one that you saw from earlier on in the day to close out our last two matches. It's Orbital as well as Silent Night, and then, of course, a new welcome back to the desk. Welcome in for the final two series of just today, as we got a whole two ahead of us. Are you excited?
I am really looking forward to this round. As we get closer to the end of the Swiss phase, we get to see some of the decks that are more successful, and I'm trying to see what can sift through the weeds here of Kai'Sa and Yi and, you know, just the decks that we're very used to. I hear we've got a pretty exciting one for this round.
Yeah, I mean, Silent Night, we're excited because, listen, it's Kai'Sa, it's Yi, it's Kai'Sa, it's Kai'Sa once again here. We are looking at a Kai'Sa build-up in front of us, and it's going to be a treat, as I believe Lusco is running this one.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting as well because there's a few different options that we have in this deck that we don't normally see. So in this case, we have something called Portal Rescue, which when you banish a friendly unit, then play it to base, ignoring its cost. And so there's some really interesting plays that could be going here, but otherwise, it's pretty much the same Kai'Sa.
Yeah, looking at this deck list, what's also really interesting to me is the composition has a lot of 2-ofs in the main deck, and a bunch of the third copies of each of those cards can be found in the sideboard. So basically approaching it as I want to be as generically good as possible against the meta as I can. I'm not targeting any deck in specific, and then in the post-board games I can bring in like the specific cards that are really good in other decks. And we've seen this approach for deck building before through lists by players like Vendordi and so on and so forth. I'll curious to see how it goes in this matchup.
I mean, we've also identified that, I mean, Kai'Sa has been the deck to play. I mean, we had 19 decks so far. We had a little bit of a clue in, I believe, here in the top bracket. Now, keep in mind, we are watching another 3-0 person. Lusco has been really flying through the current echelons of this trials. What would you say? Would you say these are good changes to the two of you? Would this be good changes to the Kai'Sa deck? Is this better than what we normally see, or will this, in your opinion, filter it to a little bit of a lower standing, even though we know that they're 3-0 with this deck?
I think it's going to require a lot of matchup knowledge to understand which cards are good and in what scenarios. So for example, like you're playing 2 smoke screens, that means that, you know, because you don't have access to the third, you're going to have to really maximize the value out of the copies that you do end up drawing, make sure that they do target or hit the right units, which means at the end of the day that I think this list could arguably be a little bit harder to pilot, especially in game 1, where, you know, your options are a bit more I want to say like restricted. Like every choice you make is going to be that much more impactful.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting too. Especially if you're looking necessarily a lot cited for against a VOLIBEAR, taking out those really big units might be a struggle as well. So to see what they're able to do against even a little different VOLIBEAR deck of what we're looking at now.
Yeah, I mean, I knew you specifically. I was very excited about this one. We got Gameslayer989 rocking out here. The only other VOLIBEAR player in this tournament this time around. And I knew you saw the earlier VOLIBEAR this time around. Has a bit more flexibility in here, but obviously taking away from the Aurora power. What do you think of this deck?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. The earlier VOLIBEAR deck that we saw had cards like Anivia. You know, I think we saw challenges in the main deck as well. And more, I guess we have the Cadrigans here as well, the Buccaneers and so on. Yeah, but what strikes me as interesting is, you know, the inclusion of cards like Misfortune and Lee Sin. Also, in terms of rounding out our removal package, we have access to Get Excited. It speaks to me, I think the reason that we're playing some of these cards is that you know, we're playing something like Lee Sin, even though we can't buff other units in this deck, you know, it is a mighty creature that does trigger the VOLIBEAR and, you know, can be accelerated in certain game instances. Also, for cards like Get Excited, you know, you're going to have a really chunky top end here in the form of like Deadbloom Predators and you know, Catrigans that you can discard. So just more removal means that I think we're playing a slower game altogether that is more focused on the Aurora than we saw in the other deck, which had, you know, a couple of more like mid-range creatures and things like that, so that I could like sort of like play on turns 2 and 3 and 4 rather than only relying on the Aurora in the late game.
Yeah, which I personally really, really liked. When I was taking a look at this, I mean, Silent, you heard me earlier, I really hate one-dimensional Aurora decks, and comparatively, we've also seen the Aurora decks have some limited success here on the day. In our looks, considering the Kai'Sa and the Volibear, do we see this type of Aurora deck working out in Lusco's favor, actually, in Gameslayer's favor this time around?
Yeah, and that's going to be the thing, because it's, yes, we're not necessarily having to rely as Aurora be the end-all, win-all kind of scenario here, but at the same time, it can also kind of pay into your detriment as well, because Aurora, while you are prepared in case you don't hit it, when you do hit it, you might not be able to find those units that you would need if that was all you were built for. And so this is a little bit more of a risk if you do end up going and getting Aurora out onto the battlefield. But still, I think this is a much more well-rounded deck list that can stand up to a Kai'Sa.
Okay, I like it. Anu, any thoughts there?
Yeah, one other thing that speaks to me is that we're only playing one copy of Catalyst of Eons. This is a card that other prominent Volibear players like Mr. Emotional has said is not really great in this archetype. Like Mobilize, being able to play that on turn 1, really powerful. But Catalyst of Eons, by the time you get to the point where you're casting this card, you know, your opponent's going to have units on board, they're going to be able to generate a point lead, and it's possible that you could just trip up over yourself while ramping with Catalyst of Eons. I think instead it just makes much more sense to use cards like Blazing Scorcher and Lee Sin to sort of generate that extra, those extra runes. Even Brazen Buccaneer on something like turn 2 makes a lot of sense to me. So overall, I like to see it. I think this is a pretty tuned list. And I think we'll find out which one comes ahead, Volibear or Kai'Sa.
Okay, I like it because it's a treat and a half. Now, there is something that we haven't mentioned too much in there either. One of, if not the better situations to occur for the Volibear, for Gameslayer, because you're running ramp, you've actually opted to not go with the Aspirant's Peak, which we normally see used as a secondary buffer in there with the battlefields. And namely, I don't believe either side is actually running it. So we are stuck at that 8-point limit cost, which means you only get those 8 points to deal with. Now, it doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but considering that almost every other Aurora that we've seen, it's surprising that we don't see it here.
Well, I think the biggest thing here is that you're not necessarily wanting to or needing to have that crutch of trying to extend the game. You're knowing that you're going to be able to really take it to them all the same with the tempo that you're able to provide before even Auroras gets out onto the battlefield. And so I don't think necessarily getting that extra point needed is all that important.
Yeah, for me, I would like to see something like Sigil of the Storm maybe leading into game number 1 as your, like, the inverse of the Aspirant's Climb, which is like instead of, you know, you needing more turns, you're actually just dragging your opponent down. The goal is still the same, but it's just going to be harder to get there as opposed to like extending the goal. You know, like the difference between the two is subtle, even though you're probably getting closer to the same output. Yeah, and I also just think that given that you have more units, like I'm looking at Lee Sin specifically to help push the count of ramping through the Relentless Storm passive ability. I think for me that is what helps you get away with not needing the Aspirant's Climb, or at least the extra time from that battlefield. So yeah, well, I'll see how it works. I mean, we're 3-0 right now, and that's a great indication of success.
Well, and one thing that's interesting, too, that I want to bounce back to on the Kai'Sa list in this case is that they have Reaver's Row as well as one of the battlefields, which is when you defend here, you may move a friendly unit from here to base. And that could pay dividends as well, not only just for the Kai'Sa player, but especially for the Volibear player, because it's like, hey, you're actually able to get over me in Reaver's Row. Well, in this case, I'm going to go back to base, and that is a big might unit that with Auroras could potentially have a much more devastating hit the following turn.
Ooh, good call out there. It's one that we got to watch for. And again, it's up to the players themselves to decide how they want to kind of work this out and how they want to approach this game. Again, when it comes to these marks, do keep in mind, yes, they are 3-0 in terms of series score, but a 4-0, if they win the series here, either one may move up to 4-0, and it pretty much secures a high-end placement when it comes to that day number 2. We talked about it before. Day number 2, gonna have those extra rounds of the Swiss bracket, but after that comes bracket, and all of a sudden, things get much more spicy. There are even prizes on the board to play for first place, for second, and third, and that is going to be one for its own. I believe the placemats specifically were really interesting to look at, so shout out to Jacob for that one, because, I mean, listen, if I were to win anything, I would love a placemat going into some of the tournaments saying, yes, I got it for that piece. You can go ahead and see it here. You got a physical Riftlab Trial 2 Champions Journal, special edition created to commemorate your achievements in the run, as well as a physical copy of a Codex of the Arcane, customized with the rune alignment of the legend played, as well as a Piltover Archive website profile picture border, very, very nice, depending if you got first, second, third, or fourth, and a digital edition copy of the Codex of the Arcane, which every single top 4 placement will get. That is awesome.
Yo, shout out to these journals. I think I saw one of my friends who had one of these Codex journals, like specifically the Riftbound themed ones, and it looked clean. I don't know, something about just like pulling up to a table, busting out like, you know, like the Fury and like the Darius colors, right? Fury and Order. And just like, you know, it's just such a massive flex. It looks cool, super, super cool. I kind of want to get one, and I mean, I'm excited to actually, like, for the opportunity to like win one. That just makes it even more of like a little prestigious little, like, all right, you know, flex. You know, I like it.
It's a treat and a half, but right now we do not care, because we're getting the players alive as we are headed into our 4th round of Swiss. Lusco going up against Gameslayer here, both 3-0, rocking out their decks and starting things off. We got a lovely Void Gate actually propped up here. Spells and abilities here, of course, each deal 1 bonus damage. That is amplification for Lusco Luna over there on that battlefield.
Sigil of the Storm on the other side. This is kind of what I was hoping for. It's not exactly Aspirant's Climb, but it will slow down the Kai'Sa's point gain, because, you know, I mean, Kai'Sa generally will do well with extra energy, or maybe like more so the inverse, which is like if you take energy away from her, she's still somewhat operational. Her curve is super low, and a lot of the times the casting cost for the, like, when it comes for like power, is covered by the legend ability. The problem that I'm curious about is what happens when you have a repeated rune denial ability in the form of Sigil of the Storm for the Kai'Sa deck, and we'll see how, if that like truly trips up her in this matchup while we're able to ramp with the Volibear ability on the other side.
And ramp you
will.
Right. Double Auroras over there too. Holy.
Yeah, and that's going to be absolutely scary to do. And I mean, at the same time, you see that, you know, we have 2,000 Tail Watchers on the other side. Nothing small to get out onto the battlefield to at least try to get some points. This could be very detrimental here, but we're still able to play a Kai'Sa. We're going to be able to draw a card off of that as well. But I mean, we're seeing a lot of duplicates here.
Oh, goodness.
It's a lot of fun duplicates. Oh my, what is going on here? You can see the smiles on both. Look at Gameslayer, dude, smiling ear to ear at this point. He is chilling on turn, saying, yo, look at what I got on the top deck, baby. Let's go breathe some fire.
Katrigan coming in a 9 might is actually just so insane here on turn 3 with the Aurora. I feel like, keep in mind, this Catalyst was a 1-of, by the way, right? So the fact that we had it for our second turn is like all the stars are aligning in the worst possible way here for the Kai'Sa player, which is a good or bad thing depending on how you feel about the champion. But yeah, this is terrifying here, because you would want to have at least a couple more points from the Kai'Sa side. You do not, so good luck.
I do. I'm scared. I'm so scared right now. Look at this. Look at this. Dude, Gameslayer is chilling like a villain right now. And here's the worst part. We saw this earlier in the fact that Auroras really do need to get off to a great start. And we talked about when it comes to, I believe it was Mobilize plus Eons, this creates a generation. Like, this is the golden hand to start. And it's occurring yet again. All of a sudden, that 9 jumps to 17. And what we saw for Lusco possibly being that that clear out chance of the Kiergan, it's not going to happen here.
Well, this is the difficult part as well, because when we're looking at, especially for game 1, there is not really any answers to get over all of this might that is becoming out. You think 1 Dazzling Aurora is going to be difficult to be with. Well, try 2 on turn 4. Can you even come back from this?
We are 3.5 minutes in, guys. We are only 3.5 minutes in. This is painful, to say the least, to watch. There comes a couple missiles headed over to the Void Gate. How hard do you want to slam this? Alright, Darius is there. What more
4
are we
damage on the
locking down
Cadrigan.
here? Yeah. Okay. Bring out a little extra in the bank there. Sending out the Hextech Ray.
Wow, this is
So
actually...
that is good.
Ooh. Is it able to clear?
No, it shouldn't be able to. I think the Darius will die here to the leftover Dead Bloom, because you have, what, 17 on one side, and then... what, you had 4... Oh, and then there's a cleave too, okay.
Oh. So that's what you're waiting for. I mean, even it looks like Gameslayer is also doing the same. This is a lot thrown here. It feels like Lusco is kind of going for a Hail Mary all of a sudden at the start, but it's answered back very, very nicely done by a little bit of that Sky Splitter, saying, okay, no, we're going to deal 5, and at least we take the Darius down with this. Nice rotational play from both the players.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
still you're
adds
able
up.
to bounce back to with the Kaisa coming in and being able to draw their cards well. I mean, that card draw is going to be king for this Kaisa to get the answers needed to deal with this Volibear.
And now we wait. And now we silently pray. In comes another Void Seeker off the rip. And it's Gameslayer just checking around. Again, you can hunt all day long. You got the Aurora to play for. You go ahead and draw a little bit of angry shouting Narm, making him known with the primal strength. Ready to roll here, and Lusco's sitting with some high cost cards, but only 6 runes here. I feel like Lusco is drawing into more of a bad hand at the end of the day.
What's also interesting to me is that the last turn we kind of had the opportunity to conquer Sigil of the Storm, and then, you know, given that we have double Thousand Eye Watcher in hand, we really just can't afford to move into that battlefield. So kind of seeing the impact here of how Sigil of the Storm might actively be generating you more like points than something like Aspirin's Climb, right? Aspirin's Climb gives you 1 point. Here, Sigil of the Storm has stopped one conquer already. So just keep a tally of that in the back of your head. Like, which one is being, you know, more effective in terms of slowing down the race?
I like that call here. Silent, how you feeling about this one? Void Gate
Well,
still being on the side.
He's still finding the answers needed now. Of course, unfortunately, not necessarily the units to respond with all this removal as well, but still doing a great job at taking care of the threats. The mayor I have right now is he found a devastating Volibear through the Aurora Elect 2, meaning that anytime that you target it, you are going to have to recycle 2 in order to successfully target it. So that can be just a huge, you know, detriment to Kaisa here on trying to have such a big threat.
Even tossing in a little bit of that Relentless Storm behind. We saw that getting triggered earlier as well, and this comes what almost feels like that Flood, and we mentioned some of those earlier units as well. The Misfortune kind of tagged in at a 5/5, just extra units to play with. Lusco does have some Falling Stars, but I mean, these are just kind of the spells to throw. We're still waiting. As you mentioned, the Watchers in hand. You have a little bit of a soldier in the background, but kind of feels a little bit out of the realm. The Nox is hopeful. Might be hoping for a Game 1 victory, but this might be moving on to Game 2 already. Answer about. Anchor to the back as well. Is it going to be useful enough?
Yeah, and that's going to be the biggest thing here. It's like, are you going to be able to get over this wall that is being built? And I mean, it feels like that Gameslayer is being very careful also about how to go about. I don't want to necessarily overextend max. You don't know, like how we know the deck lists in particular, so you don't know if they're putting in any, you know, certain board wipes or things of that nature with like power, things like that. And so it's like, do I want to overextend? Because if I do, here we go. Sins coming right into the battle.
Yeah, what's interesting is that we're putting the Lee Sins in the base here as opposed to in either the Sigil or the Void Gate. And I think this is Gameslayer kind of just giving the nod to something like Thousand Eye Watcher, where if you clump up on the battlefields, you may risk something sort of crazy happening. And if you leave him in base here, I think it's fine. Just play it slowly. At this point, you have double Dazzling Aurora. It's your game to lose, so don't make mistakes. Just, have all the cards that they could possibly have, cover the range, and you should be good to go.
Yeah. I mean, you are holding up very, very well. I mean, Lusco even is still sitting there going, okay, I gotta find some options here. Is gonna toss out one of those Watchers and say, okay, I still have 2 in hand, by the way, top deck. Another, all 3 actually in hand right now. But that's your entire move, and it feels kind of bad at the moment. You're gonna go ahead and drop a Falling Star in there just to try and clear out that Misfortune, which you will be able to. But still, Gameslayer has now bumped up to a +2 option, might be moving to a +3 here in just a bit. There it is. So Gameslayer's in a really good position to go ahead and take this over. And if you flip the Auroras as well, all of a sudden your battlefield becomes even more cluttered. But Gameslayer's still like, I gotta be careful, just like you both called. Let's be careful, let's be respectful of what can come out here.
Yeah, because the big thing here is 7 cards in hand for the Kai'Sa player. That is a lot of mystery here, but it looks like, especially after that turn, you are going to be seeing now that, if he didn't play the unchecked power, now I might be able to be okay on Rigger. I think I have the knowledge that I have it safe to now reinforce my battlefield and go win.
Clean shot at that finish, and honestly, if we're here on the desk watching, that's pretty much it. Well done to Gameslayer. Got the perfect start to the game. Ran it all the way through. Poor Lusco was sitting there like, dang, I couldn't have done much, but maybe my side deck is able to help me out. Has a couple of Cathian Reigns. Got a Cleave in there. Is there anything here that can help him out? Anew that you're kind of looking at and eyeing specifically?
Yeah, let's go through a couple of these options one by one. I'm actually not a huge fan of Retreat in this matchup. We're not really playing around removal too much. There is, something like Sky Splitter, there is something like Void Seeker, but really what we want to be doing is getting on the board before there are other units in play. And, to that end, I don't think we're trying to weave through removal. We're just trying to power through it. Smokescreen, you can make an argument for. That means that you're committing to the plan of trying to just beat through the big units. So if they put something like a Dead Bloom Predator in play, you want to actually fight toe-to-toe with them. It might just be the best option that you have available to you. I'm not really a big fan of it because, once Aurora is in play, you got to find a way to keep up with every single unit that comes into play. So you don't need just one Smokescreen, you need a bunch. Cleave, also weird. I feel like you might be defending more often than not until you get to the late portions of the game where, when you're attacking, they're going to have either multiple units on a battlefield, in which case Cleave is not enough, or they might have, some sort of removal or things like that sort of make Cleave's impact not so high. I don't really think Cleave is for this matchup. A Cathian Rain also, on paper, it's okay, I can kill units with this card, but it's really just not very efficient from a energy perspective, unlike its counterpart, Unchecked Power. So, at least from the Kai'Sa side, I think there's only 1 or 2 cards that I'm really excited for. You might be able to argue to bring in the Portal Rescue. We might be desperate enough to need to leverage Watcher's effect, Thousand Eye Watcher's effect, multiple times over the course of a game. So, we'll see how it goes.
Okay, I can appreciate that one. Silent Knight, I know we took a look over at Gameslayers, but Gameslayers had such a solid game. Barely needed to mulligan out too much in the early stages. Now looking at Windswept Hillock, do we expect to see any sort of swap out here with the side deck, or do you just assume, hey, I'm going to get that great start again, and I'm going to run through with the 2-0 in this series as well?
Well, I think you still want to play it safe. Yes, you had the perfect game and then some with double Aurora, but even still, yeah, you have some great sides against the Kai'Sa matchup as well. Sabotage could be a very viable one, trying to go ahead, and there it is in the opening hand, to go ahead and not only see what's in your opponent's hand, but getting rid of something that is not a unit. That can be very helpful on getting, a very big threat, especially when you're in momentum. Likewise, too, Stormbringer, very good card as well. You're able to choose a friendly unit in your base and deal damage equal to its might to all enemy units at a battlefield. And so might not be as applicable, but if you notice that your Kai'Sa is getting too far ahead, it could still be a great answer for this matchup.
I don't know if you caught that, but Luska kind of like kicked back laughing, watching Mobilize get played on turn 1. That is the strongest play that Gameslayer could have had. And if it's an indication of anything, oh my, also top decking the Dazzling Aurora there. Yeah, I mean, this Volibear player terrifies me. You know, the archetype is already like solid, but when you add in the right amounts of luck, you know, then you have truly something that is just like unstoppable. I guess Relentless is a better way to describe it.
Yeah, I feel the worst part is, this is exactly how Game 1 went as well. We saw the top deck mobilize, but it was directly into Eons as well, so I feel like Lusko kind of had a little PTSD, was like, bro, don't do this to me again. I swear to God, if you top deck the perfect formation, I'll be upset. But, as we see from the hand, Gameslayer does not have that perfect setup, still needing to wait maybe an extra turn before you can lay out the Aurora. The difference being you still have a good hand to play with. We saw the Lee Sin being played out, get a little extra might behind it if need be, but this is what we were talking about as well, with Gameslayer having a bit more of that flexibility as needed as we head into turns 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, and something interesting here to keep in mind as well is that the Volibear decided to go with Windswept Hillock, which is going to be really good for this situation as well, because as he takes units into the Hillock, he can go ahead then and give them ganking because of the battlefield and go right on over to the other battlefield. And so it's like, that is versatile, and that will probably be the #1 option for him really to get control of this game, especially as we are 3-0 with the Kaisa ahead.
That's a great start. Hoping to see a bit more here as well. Lusko, Anu. This is going to be a little bit of a playmaking. You can see Lusko kind of shuffling around some of the units, starting to play around, see what they can get away with, and how to dance these battlefields, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm not so sure how I feel about this play. We had 5 energy. I'm almost tempted to have just maybe like played... Did we have the Stupefy? Am I going crazy? Maybe I missed it. Yeah, we have the Stupefy, yeah. Stupefy into like double Noxus Hopeful, I think, to just put them in base. Right now, I mean, it's obvious there's a Lee Sin in play, but we have to worry about a couple other options like Dazzling Aurora or Dead Bloom Predator. And so this is terrifying. I mean, it's turn 3, we're online, like not good. Not good here for the Kaisa player.
No.
Take Gameslayer to Vegas. Come on, man. He has won the lottery with this guy.
he's got 5, 6. You top deck that 9 without even recycling a single thing. Are you freaking kidding me, dude? That is wild. Now, good news is, Lusko at least has a few other units. And when I say a few, you got about 6. So you can theoretically try and slam somewhere. The problem is you gotta back it with heftier spells than just a falling star and then some, as we see the sabotage come out, and guess what? You get to draw away a bit more of what Lusko was gonna hang on to. Well played by Gameslayer.
Yeah, so usually the ebb and flow for Riftbound will involve, you know, extending into a battlefield and pulling back to develop, then extending back into a battlefield, then pulling back to develop. The timing on the sabotage here is actually really nice, because this is what the development turn that Lusko has taken off while the Dazzling Aurora is in play and generating value. So forcing the sabotage here, saying you're about to pop off next turn, well, let me make sure that when you try to, at least it's not going to be the best possible outcome you were expecting. It'll be something worse. And that means that Falling Star gets taken here. We're left with the Stupefy. We're left with the Retreat. And I think it'll probably require Thousand Eye Watcher to come down next turn then. But yeah, good timing on the sabotage here from Gameslayer.
Very, very cool.
And then here's the big thing about the Vol as well, because of the battle that he's in. And when I attack, deal 5 damage split among any number of any. And so also have an impact as well. Moves. So right now, Luna has a difficult choice to make. How do I go about maybe going all in on the Hillock in this case, or do I go into the peak, hoping though that this Volibear, when he can this.
Now you got me thinking, dude. Now I'm sitting here like, you know, which direction do I want to go? Which danger path do I want to run? And you can even see Luna sitting there doing the exact same. Hey, I got these units, I want to be able to play it, but there's only so many moves, and either one kind of leads to doom. I gotta choose wisely. I gotta mitigate what's about to come down, because we're gonna watch that 5-2 close down to most likely a 5-4 very, very quickly. On the other side, though, Gameslayer doesn't actually have that many spells to play with. We talked about his deck having a little bit of a difference in there. A lot more heavy hitting units, has a couple of the dragons to play, and can get things working, or go for the Aurora next turn, but not much to clear a lot of these 3-4 might units on the board.
Yeah, and you can see Gameslayer kind of in the tank here, trying to figure out, okay, if my opponent plays this Watcher next turn, you have, what, about 18, right? 4, 4, 8, 2, 10, 13, plus 5, 18. Yeah, 18 might in play. So what do I actually have to present on the board to be able to survive this? And when you factor in the 7 from the Watcher as well, that bumps you up to 25. So I'm thinking even if you slap like Dead Bloom there, or if you put like double Blazing Archon, that's still not Blazing Archon, sorry, Blazing Scorcher, that puts you at 16 plus 9 is 25. So I guess technically if you put 2 of the dragons in the Windswept Hillock and you flop over something nice with the Dazzling Aurora, are you in a good position to survive the onslaught from, the weenies that the Kaisa deck has?
I hate that that's actually true, because against any other deck, I feel like this many units on the board would actually scare us, but against a volley deck like this, it really does just feel like weenies. It's like hot dogs being thrown at you. Like, what are you actually going to do to me? I'm sorry. I love the spin, by the way. Like, Gameslayer is just like, wee! This is great. I have another 5. I got plenty here, over here, on the Hillock side.
Well, and this is going to be interesting, too, and I'm surprised, not necessarily surprised, it's still a great play, playing the second Dazzling Aurora because of how far it can get you ahead. The one thing that I'm worried about, seeing a little bit of sighting of Thermo Beam all gear in this case. Very good card to sight in with, and so it's not necessarily as sighted in as of a card, especially it being a 5 cost to recycle. That's tough, but still, it's like if both those Auroras get taken out with a threat like that, especially not knowing your opponent's deck list, that can really set you back in this game.
It's actually interesting. So from my experience, I've actually not been happy with Thermo Beam really while playing. I feel like it's a card that it's very expensive for what it does, and the window that you actually have to play it is more often limited than not. Like, in this situation, for example, right? Like if you took a turn off and you played Thermo Beam to get rid of both Dazzling Auroras, I guess technically with this exact board state, because we played like 8 creatures in one turn, like previously, like we could actually keep parity with the battlefields. But more often than not, I don't feel like that's the case. So it's kind of interesting. I wonder if, I'd love to hear if like Gameslayer is like playing around this in any capacity, or just says, hey, here's my Aurora. I'm not really going to think about it. Here's units. You deal with it. It's your problem now.
Yeah. No, and that's a great way to put it too. Just, continue to pay it forward with the Auroras and play your game. And so, but yeah, it's definitely, especially as now Thousand Tail Watcher is coming in, minusing 3 from all units on the battlefield as we move in and take the peak. And so is he going to be able to go in and take the Hillock at this point as well? And I mean, this is going to be something very helpful, because that will mean that it is going to be 7-3.
Much more doable now.
The other thing that I'm actually kind of happy to see here is that we didn't accelerate the Watcher. We simply put it into our base exhausted. And given that we had so many units in play already, it makes sense. We're just going to leverage the ability and hold up retreat to buy back the Watcher for something like next turn, maybe. Really, really strong play here. And my fingers are crossed here, not because I am also a Kaisa player. It's because I'm a Kaisa player. But I'm super excited to see double Dazzling Aurora get taken down here. That would be really exciting.
I think it would.
Well,
go ahead.
No, well, and especially just because he's hit double Dazzling Aurora, and, we would almost automatically want to just scoop up looking at a double Dazzling Aurora. But in this case, Luna is like, nope, I'm going to put my shoulder to the wheel, kind of thing, and just grind it out and see if I can take it. And right now it is 7-3, and he very well, as a Kaisa player, could be taking down a double Aurora VOLIBEAR.
Only in a singular game, though. You got to go ahead and take the set, because keep in mind, Gameslayer won game number 1 in this same fashion, although it was a little bit quicker and a little bit more off rip. And we mentioned the fact that, you know, some of these units that that Gameslayer has actually held on to, I believe, all game. You take a look, had 2 dragons, 2 5s, and then the 6 in there as well. That's stuck with him since the early game. That's stuck with him since turn number 1, and hasn't really shifted out from there. So Gameslayer is like, okay, I gotta figure out something to do here. Is gonna go ahead and attack on that Targon's Peak. Say, hey, let's go ahead and stomp you out here. You need a little extra, and that's a quick rotational of value in. Very nice extra shielding to be had. The retreat covers your backside, and out comes the Thousand-Tailed Watcher. At least hang on to the battlefield.
You know, this board state looks really close here for the Kai'Sa. I feel like victory is just like right within her grasp. I'm trying to think how we even got into this position, and I have a conjecture. I have a theory. I actually think this game, it may not have been completely correct to play the second Dazzling Aurora the turn we could have. I do agree we could have played the Dazzling Aurora at some point, but if you look at what ended up happening in that game, and when you factor in the, you know, the might of our units, on average, we're actually not going to hit something crazy, right? We run the risk of low rolling into exactly cards like Buccaneer and Lee Sin, which we did hit, and that actually gave Lusco Luna the opportunity to double conquer that turn. So if we lose, it is probably because we didn't convert our energy into more might than we could have on that specific turn.
Okay. So as the pacing is also picking up on this game, we want to just mention that we just saw a Misfortune get drawn. This is one of the first Misfortunes that we've seen in the entire series thus far that Gameslayer has hit. First time I move each turn, you may ready something else that's exhausted. It's a very nice piece to go ahead and collect, but is it going to be enough? This is one of those moments where we're saying, hey, maybe if you had just all high costs, you would have been able to hold on a little bit deeper, because out comes the Darius, ready to play, and it feels like Luna is just going to try and slam out at least one of these and claim that last victory point if they can.
Well, and that's going to be the thing. The Darius having +2 might, you also have the Stupefy in hand potentially to really help things out if need be. But, I mean, Stupefy is not going to be doing much as you would hope in this case. It still does get you a card draw, which is nice, but that's you have 1 rune left to really use in this case. So maybe a retreat to help clear up some battlefield, but otherwise, yeah, it's going to be a little bit difficult of a situation here. I gotta say, too, I love seeing these cams and just the different mannerisms that each player currently has. You know, Gameslayer, I'm gonna just lean back, put my hands behind my head, and now think closer to the table. And, you know, at the same time, Luna just really trying to mull over what kind of course do I do to get the best bang for my buck with the board I have built up currently.
It's just one small step away from victory, but that victory point feels so far away at the exact same time. We're breaking into the 14-minute mark, and of course, reaching into that almost round 6 or 7 for each player. And you can see both of them kind of juggling. They're saying, hey, is this kind of game over? Luna doesn't want to have it end, but there it is, a twist and a half. Luna is going to sacrifice, hang on to the battlefield as it is, kind of build up fortifications. Gameslayer might be looking at a 7-7 crossroad moving into this finale if time allows.
Yeah, interesting choice here to not send the Darius and the Watcher in. I mean, the outcome is that you're probably left with just the Darius, which is 5 might, which is actually very overcomable if you're in the Volibear side of things. And so maybe for that reason, you know, Lusco Luna is just like, all right, you know what, you're going to go up to 5 or 7 or something this turn. In which case, I'm going to do my best to win, not this turn, but the turn after, where I'll have all my units in play, and I'll have access to all my spells. So we'll see how this goes. I am skeptical because we're giving Dazzling Aurora 2 more units to put into the battlefields. But Lusco Luna knows their deck better than I do, and we'll see if there's some sort of top deck draw. Like, imagine drawing into another Thousand Eye Watcher. That would be actually insane.
I would At that point, you're not just going to Vegas, you're also hitting the lottery specifically. You're just like, look, get a ticket, let's go. Instead, you hit the third misfortune, still stacking up neatly over there on top of the hillock, but there is one more, as you called, if you want to go ahead and try and roll, but at the same time, I don't believe so. So you go ahead and say thank you. You can see the laughter, you can see the smiles, both players enjoying themselves. Not only do they know they are sitting in here in the trials at 3-0. Of course, even if you go 3-1, you're not upset. But my god, seeing that double Aurora, I think Luna's even saying, dude, I could have drawn anyone else. Why couldn't I get the other Kaisa player instead of this Volibear that has seemingly hit everything and the bank?
Well, and you can't necessarily, you know, you still should be able to potentially get into the top cut if need be with one loss. And it's like, you know, you almost got to shrug this off if you do end up losing this, because it's like, you know, my opponent just hit everything that they could possibly need to win this game. It had nothing necessarily to do with what I could do as a player, but just they hit it.
Have you ever seen that many champions on a single battlefield? Nay, in League of Legends, 3 misfortunes plus a volley behind. How much might is that? I do not know. Oh my freaking god. What is that? That's 15, 20, 8, and 9. That is what? 37 on a singular battle. A single stupefy, a single anchor to someone's head.
Gosh, what? That Stupefy is going to make an impact here. You know, that's -1 from that. You know, but it's going to be really interesting to see. You know, there's 12 runes out for the Kaisa player. Could potentially still draw that answer that is needed, but still, this is scary. It's like I have to take not only just one, but I have to take both battlefields. Otherwise, Gameslayer is going to take this game and the match.
Danu, tell me there's a way out. Tell me there's a way out before we see the boards clear.
Oh, I'm not so sure. I mean, you play the Watcher here, you proc the Darius. So, but I don't know how you're going to go after the Lee Sin, though. That's the problem that bugs me. Because now you're also losing your Darius's ability to ready itself, which means you go into combat. I don't know. I think what I would have liked to have seen here is if this was the play that we had, I would have played the Watcher first, and then maybe tried something else. So that we could ready the Darius. That's tough, though. I don't even know if the Watcher... I'm not doing the math. By the way, I'm literally not doing the math here on purpose. Because there's just so much might and toughness and everything like that.
We need this illustrator. We need the markers out on the screen.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. Politely speaking, this is Lusco's problem, not mine.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say that. I'm like, the only one who needs to do math is Luna right now. You know, we're fine to theorize as we need, but... Oh, that is so tough. And yeah, it looks like that very well could be it.
No! I don't think Luna was ready for that. You saw Luna like, bro, are you serious? Are you serious? You held that the entire time. You let me count for 5 minutes, and then you threw that in my face. How dare you? We are looking, I believe, at a GG series over. Gameslayer up 4-0. Well done in there. I don't think I've ever been so entertained. The cameras only amplified the chaotic nature of that match.
Yeah, I think both games, I mean, especially game 1, just like turn 3 Dazzling Aurora is truly a nightmare. Like, I have to ask myself, like, what is the subset of games where you have turn 3 Dazzling Aurora in game 1 and you lose? And I would be shocked if it was more than like 5% or something, you know? Like, that card is, with the one of Catalyst 2, games 2 and 3, games 2, there was another game, was also just like double Dazzling Aurora, and I don't know, man, like, solid technical play, a powerful deck, and the right amount of luck, like, you know, peppered through the match, like, terrifying. Absolutely jaw-droppingly terrifying. Props for this interesting take on Volibear that features Orange Lee Sin. I'm kind of down for it.
Yeah, it does a really good job at, just like what we were saying, it's like, well, maybe you just play it to activate the Volibear effect, but also getting that 6 might out, and it for the Kaisa to have to overcome in the end. And I mean, yes, not only did we see the lottery be hit, so almost was able to come back with that as well, but still, that final point that is needed to get to that 8th point by taking both battlefields or even just holding one long enough when you are going against a Volibear deck is just so difficult to have to do.
It's bittersweet a little bit. We all like seeing a Kai'Sa deck go down. We don't like that it fell to an Aurora. It's bittersweet because we gotta see double Aurora. Nobody likes to see double Aurora unless you're playing it, unless you're an Aurora fan. So it's like, hey, what came out of it at the end? What we can say is Gameslayer had an amazing run and is still having an amazing run. 4-0 already pretty much locked their spot in, and they're going to be playing in round 5 here today as well. For Luna, can't be upset. You're 3-1 right now. You still have plenty of time to ramp back up. You can go ahead and possibly even curve into a 6-1 if you play your next few matches amazingly well. We've all talked about it though, because looking into day number 2, we have a little bit of a bird chirping on our ear, or that bird being Jacob, that we have multiple Kai'Sa decks currently sitting at the top of the tables here, and I want to get both of your thoughts here as we move in to round 5, which could very well be a Kai'Sa v Kai'Sa setup. What do we think of the potential spat of the Kai'Sas at the top?
All I will say is that if there's a lot of Kai'Sas at the top, our Volibear players are going to be certainly happy, especially if they can turn 3 Aurora. But I think, you know, looking at the Kai'Sa matchup itself, I think it's going to be pretty nuanced. I think it'll be very skill-based and really will reward, you know, proper deck building for that matchup. So when we get there, we'll get there. But yeah, once that happens, like, it's going to be like every single little bit of value that you can extract. If you can get all of that, then you will, you know, create some sort of incremental advantage that over time will snowball into a win, right? So, like, that's the one thing where it's like, well, it's really context dependent. I can't say too much right now. I personally am a fan of watching high skill matchups. So the Kai'Sa mirror is something that don't tell people, but I actually like enjoy watching it because I can learn a lot from it too. But secretly, I am kind of just like hoping that this Volibear player just like farms everyone for the next 3 rounds for good deck selection. Keep in mind, we only had like 2 Volibear players in the entire event, so seeing both of them play and doing well is quite nice.
Oh,
yeah, and that's going to be the big thing as well. And I think you're exactly right. And I big thing with as well is who's going to be having the better card draw as well. Not only is the removal going to be a vital thing in that kind of matchup, but even just maintaining that hand size. So if there's anything that my opponent, who is also playing the mirror with me, has these answers that keep coming out, can I then go ahead and continue to find those as I, you know, draw my cards as well? So a lot of game left, though. We still have multiple rounds to play, and we'll see what these competitors can bring as we move further into this great tournament.
Yeah, well, guess what? I led you guys on the longest tangent ever because we don't have Kai'Sa v Kai'Sa. It is actually going to be an Annie 4-0 right now in the top of our bracket. The other champion and legend that has graced our screen thus far. Day 1 is coming to a close here with the Riftlab trials, but don't go anywhere because we have one more round and then you get to prep for day number 2. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.